Good day, everyone. How are you on this fabulous Thursday? And this is Power Hour Coaching with me, Bernadette Boas of Ball of Fire Coaching. I always get very revved up for today and for this particular Power Hour. Power Hour just makes me all, kind of energized as well. But I also get excited because this is your opportunity to get the support, the coaching, the tips and the advice that you need so you can be making transformative changes in your career, business, or life. And so each and every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, I give you an opportunity to reach out, pose your question, state the challenge that you're having. And even if you're not here necessarily live, you can always, before, during, and after, be posting your question or challenge and allowing me to reach out to you directly and get you some tips and advice and support that you need. So before, during, or after, I want to remind you. So during, while we're live, you also have an opportunity by just simply leaving a comment where you see the streaming in order to join me live right here in the studio. So should you choose to do that, just leave a comment that you wanted to join me, and I will shoot you back on that comment a link to where you can join me right here in the studio, and we can kind of have a one-on-one conversation about it. And keep in mind too, the question that you have or the situation you're dealing with, like the ones we're going to talk about today, they're probably very much the same that others are dealing with. So you stepping in and asking your question and asking for that help and support will also help others as well. And it helps you realize that you're not alone, that other people are dealing with the same kind of challenges that you are. All right. So again, this is your Power Hour Coaching. And I'm giving you that opportunity to ensure that you're getting the support that you need. All right. So let me highlight the question that we're going to talk about, and then we'll talk a little bit about kind of the approach that I'll be taking during today's session. And then we will dive into getting the tips and advice that will help at least these two individuals and maybe yourself to move forward. So the two questions that we have thus far, but keep in mind you can continue to comment and leave me those. The first one's from George. This actually came in yesterday. How do I gain influence with my team? Now that's a loaded question, George. I did reach out to him already. That's a loaded question, but at the same time, there's definitely some things in that that we want to talk about and we want to share with everyone because many of us, if not all of us, are looking to be able to influence others in a very positive, productive way in our lives. So that's an awesome, awesome question. And then the other one we're going to address is, and this has more confidentiality around it, so I'm presenting it kind of very generically, but it has to do with how do I recoup from an unprofessional communication that I sent? So they felt when they reached out that something that they had sent out wasn't the most professionally stated, formulated piece of communication. And so they wanted to get some guidance on it. All right. So a little bit about kind of, how I go about these type of Power Hour coachings and what you can kind of gain from it. So I really believe coaching is an opportunity to guide you or anyone with a whole slew of questions based on whatever it is that you're presenting verbally, in writing, and then really kind of drilling into it and getting underneath the cover, so to speak, to really understand the real issue, as opposed to oftentimes as a coach, someone will share a situation with me, but they're really not sharing the emotional side of it, kind of the driving side of it, kind of what impact it's having on them, not just academically or technically, but more so on them personally, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, so forth and so on. So as a coach, I really believe it's my job to ask a lot of questions, read into what it is that someone is saying and or writing, and really getting at the heart of the situation so they understand it better. More importantly, that series of questions is meant to steer them to the answer, to the solution, to the decision, to the opportunity, whatever the case might be, without me having to draw that conclusion for them, unless, we're at that place where then they're, looking for some specific guidance and tactics and actions and advice. So that's how we will model against these questions, because when you send me a question or a situation, I'm going to get with you directly, and we can actually, even jump on a call and have a deeper dive conversation into it. But then I do want to model them here because, like I said, so many of you also might be challenged with the same question or situation, and therefore the advice would help you as well. And we won't get into, because typically, my conversations could be anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes. And we won't get into all that, but I will definitely make sure we hit on the big tips and advice and answers to what it is that is being positioned and provided to me. All right. Oh, Lee. Okay. We have someone coming in right now asking a question. So I'm actually going to jump to that one since they may not be able to stick around for a long time. Hi, Lee. How are you? All right. So Bernadette, I'm looking to launch a transformational training program. Where and how would you recommend I start promoting it? Okay. So Lee, if you are online, let me know. Is it already packaged? Do you already have it packaged? Do you know your target client? If you can, in as few words as possible, if you can give me an idea of that, that would be awesome. Now, keep in mind too, Lee, if you want to come into studio with me, I'll post the link, and you can join me if you care to. So let me know that too, if you'd like to do that and get the feedback to you directly. You could just say, yes, send me a link. Or you could just scribble something out. I'll start answering it as you might be responding to me. Okay. Partiality. Okay. Does that mean that you're partially ready to launch, or that it's all good and ready to go? Because this is what I'm looking for. Your overall plan and strategy for your transformational training program should answer the question you're asking. Okay. So the questions I would ask is, all right, so it's a transformational training program. Who is it for? Who is your ideal target client? And I will coach you to say, do not tell me everybody is. Who is that niche group of people? Let's do in studio next week. Okay, that's fine, but stick around, because I am going to answer this question since it's positioned right now. So the first thing I would ask Lee, or anyone who has the similar question about they're getting ready to launch a program and they're looking to figure out how to best start promoting it, the first questions you need to ask yourself, because they're going to give you the answer, is who is your target market? Is it corporate? Is it entrepreneurs? Is it stay-at-homes? Is it men? Is it women? Is it professionals? Is it not professionals? Is it 20 to 40 somethings, or is it 40 to 60 somethings? Is it, certain levels of a corporate organization, like senior, executive levels, or is it for, entry levels? So be very specific and niched in regards to who is the target market who's going to need this transformation training program. Don't worry about who's going to buy it. If they need it, they're going to buy it. So, answer those questions, because that's going to then answer your question about where to start promoting it. So for instance, if it is corporate, well, that's like LinkedIn. That's kind of a gimme. It could be Instagram. It could be even Facebook, but trust me when I say, because I've been, working with entrepreneurs and corporate for a very long time, I find, okay, hold on. Let me finish this. I find that I certainly have corporate professionals on Facebook. I even have clients that are on Facebook. At the same time, we don't necessarily do business on Facebook for the work that I do, which is transformational training and coaching and whatnot. So his category is Christians who are disillusioned with the church. Okay, so my question would be, where do they hang out? Where are these individuals? Especially when it comes to the church. Now, I haven't done a lot of work with the church, but at the same time, you know, as much as they are online in groups, they also have a very kind of on the ground, organic type of environment, meaning, you know, they are in the church. So they're going to Bible studies or programs that are in the facilities, and or online with those facilities. And therefore, that could be a great way for you to start promoting it. The other thing when it comes to something like that is you could be reaching out to the organizations, and I use that word loosely when it comes to a Christian, the Christian population, but you could reach out to them and kind of partner, like, you know, ask them if they'd be willing to promote it and position it. Let's see, that's what I need to find out. Christians who are disillusioned. So that's what I need to find out. Yeah, so those would be a great, you know, kind of the next set of questions. You know your target market, Christians who are disillusioned by the church. Then, you know, you ask yourself, okay, where are they? And you start looking. You get on Facebook, you get on Instagram, you get on TikTok, you get on LinkedIn, you get on, you know, Christian organization sites. You look up Christian associations, and they don't kind of tune out the fact that you're going to look for these Christian-based places, because even though they're disillusioned, they still might be like hanging on because they're looking for maybe your transformational program. They're looking for that answer. They're looking for that support. They're looking for that reason to not be disillusioned. So, you know, be sure to be looking there. But look for those online forums where they might be talking and chatting. Look for those experts. Look for other experts who are in that same space, who serve that same target market, which is disillusioned Christians, and look to see where they're spending their time. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, I would tell you, Lee, that if I was in that space, disillusioned Christians, and therefore I had a website, my website told you what social platforms I'm on. It shares with you kind of what organizations or affiliations or associations I'm connected to. I would even suggest to you, go to my website and pull off all that information and start kind of, you know, marketing to them, marketing to their audience, and spending time with that, you know, those individuals, those experts, as well as those end customers, so to speak, those disillusioned Christians. Where and how, I want to make sure I answer your question. Where and how would you recommend I start promoting it? Definitely, I would suspect it's a transformational training program. So you could certainly start. Are you on LinkedIn? Well, yes, you are, because you're connecting me through LinkedIn. So definitely make sure it's on your LinkedIn profile. Definitely make sure that you're posting it, you know, in your stream on LinkedIn. Definitely be using LinkedIn to find those Christian organizations and associations and affiliations that you can start reaching out to, and you send them a introductory, not a sales pitch, introductory DM that introduces yourself to them, doesn't sell anything, introduces yourself to them. And then you can follow up with them. You can ask them a question. You know, what's the number one, you know, thing you're working with your congregation? Get into a dialogue with them, and then you could ask them, may I share with you information regarding a transformational training program I've put together? So be patient, take your time, but also be sure you are sitting down and laying it out. Now, I'm assuming when you said partiality, did that mean, if you're still on, did that mean that you're partially finished in producing the transformational training program? And I'll take just a second to see if he's there to answer that. Because if that's the case, then work in tandem. If you're not finished, then start also doing this research. Start putting together a list of the people and the places and the associations and online areas that you can start reaching out to and introducing yourself and providing them a presentation on what it is that you have to offer. Start doing it now as you're finishing developing the training program. Because what I would have told you had you come to me even earlier in your development of your training program is, the minute you start developing or having an idea for your training program, get out there and start doing the research, start doing the marketing. So for instance, when I was writing my book back in 2010, I came up with the idea in mid 2009. And I knew it was going to take me a year or so to write it, plus get it published. I immediately had this idea because I love to speak. I had this immediate idea that I would start my radio show, Shedding the Bitch Radio. And so I started my show probably a year before I had the book out because I wanted to use it as a marketing platform. I'm not telling you have to start a podcast. That's not my point. My point is you want to start your marketing and the research, very early on because you want to get people excited. Oh my gosh, it's coming. And it's okay that it's not done. It's okay that it's not done because you could be building up, excitement around this program. Excuse me. Thanks very much. The training will be free, and should it be of help, they can then donate to a nonprofit. Free or not free. It doesn't really matter how you're, kind of positioning it from whether it's fee-based or not. The amount of work, the amount of marketing and work to promote a free product is very, very close, if not exact, to what it takes to make money from that product and charge a fee for it. So the work still has to be put in there, even if it's free, especially nowadays. Excuse me. Excuse me. Especially nowadays, especially following the last couple of years, everything was free because, everyone was trying to help everybody through what they've been dealing with. And so it's almost gotten very diluted, the fact that there's programs out there are free. I'm not saying you shouldn't have yours for free. That's not what I'm saying. But what my point being is, it's just, you need to do just as much work and with a good amount of time that it would take for you to then market it and position it as it would if it was a fee-based program. So start now. And what I would do is you definitely know your target market. And based on your target market, okay, hold on a minute. He's got some great questions. And based on your target market, that will tell you, where and how to start promoting, because disillusioned Christians, they're hanging out somewhere. So go do that. Once you find out where they're at, start kind of getting introduced into it, whether it's a person, a forum, an association or organization, and then start getting them really excited about what your transformational training program is all about. Okay. So reach out to me. Yes, definitely next week. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any further questions that you need addressed on that topic of your transformational training program. So then Lee's coming along and he's asking how to start a radio program and a live show like yours. All right. So we'll split this in two because radio podcast type of program, that's not what this is. So you're also asking about how do I start this live show like what I'm doing right now? Is that your question? And so the first question I would ask anyone, if we're going to model coaching during this session is, again, there's things underlying that. The question sounds very academic and I can answer it very easily, but yet what I'd want to know as a coach to make sure that I'm supporting what it is that you're really looking for is I would want to know what's prompting this question. Yeah. Okay. So, and what's prompting this question is, so if you wanted to share, Lee, for what purpose and outcome or result are you looking to either start a radio program or do some of these lives? Because again, I can get into technical how to do it very easily, but I would never go there first with a client because that could send them down a rabbit hole they really don't need to be. Not everybody's meant to do lives. Not everybody's meant or have a purpose, I should say, to do lives or a podcast, radio show, so forth and so on. So again, you want to be asking yourself, why would I want to do a radio show? Why would I want to start doing lives? What is my goal and objective? Who am I serving? What is the value or the transformation that I want them to achieve as as a result of this program I'm going to put forth? And once you have all that understood and you're still convinced and you still are like, yes, this is going to allow me to achieve my goals of A, B, and C. And I understand that it's going to take me to do 1, 2, and 3. Then you can get into asking someone kind of the technical, what I'll call the technical questions, like, how do you start a radio program? How do you, start a live show like mine? Because I can answer that latter one by all you have to do is go on to LinkedIn, go on to Facebook, go on to Instagram and hit live and you have a show. Because technically that is how easy it is. But build a following by interacting with future participants of your training program. Awesome. So what I would do is this. I would lay down on a piece of paper, which you already may have because you already have your transformation training program kind of in the works. All right. So again, those disillusioned Christian individuals is who you'd be targeting then. Again, where do they hang out? What do they do? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Facebook? Are they on TikTok? Are they on somebody else's, type of portal? Do they have a functionality to where I could provide live training programs? And if so, then you take your content of your training program and you take it out by outline or by index or however, table of content, and you just make talking points for a live discussion that might run 10 minutes, could run 20 minutes, could run 30 minutes, could be like what I'm doing, and you just come up and then you define a day of the week and a time that you're going to show up consistently based on whatever schedule that is. And then you just go and deliver it, but you have to be sure that you're committed to doing it each and every, whatever that frequency is. So I commit to doing every Thursday at 1:00. If I can't be here and that happens regularly, well, then no one's going to trust that I'm going to be there the next week. So they're not going to show up. And quite honestly, I've been doing this now for 4 or 5 weeks. And only in last week and this week am I, finally getting like a Lee to join in, because again, it takes time and people don't necessarily will buy in right away. They want to know that you're going to show up, you're going to be consistent, you're going to be bringing value, you're going to help them with their problem, not being a mouthpiece for yourself. And therefore, you just need to be also patient with it. But you have the content. And it's just a matter of finding where those followers are, where those potential participants and students are for the future, and then going and hitting that live button and creating a theme for what it is that you are doing. Mine is Power Hour Coaching. It used to be a couple months ago. It was Powerhouse Maverick Training, and I used to only do it for my private group on Facebook. And it was very entrepreneurial. And it was focused on as much leadership, but also on business strategies and tactics and whatnot. And I found that I was shifting into more of a leadership target market and really wanting to target and have the discussions around what gets in the way of someone being a powerhouse leader, that I decided that I would kind of shift and pivot to providing the coaching so I can also model the coaching and talk about topics that I ask for around leadership. So you just need to kind of put that plan together, just like for your training program. Put a plan together. What would a show be about? What is the target market? What is the outcome I'm looking for them? What will my frequency be? Where am I going to do it? What are the topics I could talk about? I have an idea book, and I just kind of continue adding and adding and adding to it. So I can have, 52 topics a year for this, for my radio show, so forth and so on. And the radio show is a little bit more involved when it comes to starting a radio show, but you can take everything I just discussed around doing a live program and apply it to starting a radio program or a podcast. But then you're also getting into more technical. It's not as easy as hitting a live button when you want to do a podcast. So that I would, if you are partially done your training program, and this goes to anybody, but if you're partially done your training program, you haven't launched it, you haven't started marketing it yet, I would say stay away from the podcast. Certainly do, a live where you could be even for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, putting, a conversation out there that, that can creates some momentum. And I have to admit, spending a lot of time on Instagram lately, even from a live perspective, that's a great place for disillusioned Christians. I'm not disillusioned Christian. I'm Christian. But it's a great place for disillusioned Christians. I'll just throw that out there for you, Lee. Okay. All right. I hope that helped you with both of those questions. And I appreciate you jumping in and sitting in. And let me get to George's and Dee's questions before we wrap up. Okay. But Lee, if you have anything else, go ahead right now. Boop, pop it in there. And I can spend a couple of more minutes on it before we move on. And I'll keep an eye out for any kind of response you might have if you haven't dropped yet. Okay, so I'm going to move. I will need to interact with people as you are with me. Well, and, like I said, do not be surprised or disillusioned. Talk about disillusion, but don't be discouraged, surprised, or disillusioned if you start doing them and people don't show up and interact. Okay. So don't be disillusioned by that. Just do it consistently because eventually they will come. I will add though, as long as you are grounded in kind of the purpose you're having, the conversational outcome that will satisfy your viewer or listener, and you are very audience oriented versus you oriented, then people will eventually find you. And I can only speak for my circle, but there's a good many people that are always seeking for some spiritual guidance, some transformational spiritual guidance. So get your plan together and and then just be patient and don't get discouraged by whether or not people are showing up initially. Okay. So if you believe in what it is that you're doing, you'll talk to an empty audience because eventually your message will seep through. Okay. All righty. Okay. So once again, thank you very much, Lee. And just reach out to me, DM me on LinkedIn, because that's where I get majority of the questions and the interactions from is on LinkedIn, even more so than my Shift to Riches Today page on Facebook. But also, before you might drop off, but stick around, I got some great questions coming up. You can also anybody can schedule some complimentary time with me, 30 minutes. And all we're going to do is talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. It's not a sales pitch. It's not anything more than, okay, so what's that question or situation that you're dealing with that you need some advice on? So Also, feel free to make a note of that and feel free to schedule some time with me. Don't be surprised if the calendar's not open until the first week of July, because I have a couple of big deliverables next week. But just you'll see some availability out there. Okay, and of course, link in with me, Lee. And you can also subscribe to our show on YouTube. Okay, just Google my name and you'll find me. And then you can also, like I said, follow me on Facebook. Okay, then. Thanks again for you're very welcome. Anytime. You're very, very, very welcome. I so appreciate you being here. Sincerely. Okay, then. George. All right. How do I gain influence with my team? Now, I had mentioned I already spoke to George in great detail. And, there's a lot we could talk about when it comes to influence. But as a means of also modeling coaching, we're going to talk through that as well. So I first wanted to look at what, kind of get under the covers. What does influence mean to him? I would ask anyone of that. If you were to pose a question like this to me, how can I gain influence? Well, what does influence mean to you? Help me understand what it means to you. So I'm sure that kind of we're on the same page when it comes to understanding, because you'd be surprised how often there's a lot of disconnect into how one perceives something and someone else has a whole different idea of it. So what, is influence to you, and what does it look like? I also asked him, what would it look like if your team actually kind of, followed your lead? You were able to influence them. Now, going back to the fact that people could have different definitions for many things. There was a time where, and it currently exists, but there was a time where influence to me would have been power, would have been command, would have been demand, would have been authority, would have been kind of all the very old school idea of what it means to be a leader. And yet none of it is true leadership. So that's another reason why you really want to have a full understanding. And then I asked, what does it look like? What does it look like when your team is, you're able to be successful in influencing your team? And, he went on to describe that it would mean that they didn't question him, but they trusted him. They came to him, meaning for support, for help, for guidance, for advice. I happened to ask him, about mentoring and coaching. Do you see your role as a mentor and a coach? Sadly, a good many managers out there do not. They don't, they don't even really think about it, let alone consider it for themselves. And yet, that's a huge, huge part of being able to influence someone. And we're going to get to kind of exactly what they could be doing. But I really wanted to understand what will it, look like to you when you're able to effectively influence your team. But that wasn't even as important to me as the way he posed the question, how do I gain influence with my team? Immediately provokes the question, why do you think you don't? Like what is happening? What is the response? What is, going on to where you think that they, you have no influence on them? And that this gets down into really the emotional level with individuals, because now all of a sudden they're going to have to acknowledge maybe a deficiency, a gap, inadequacy, because if something's not happening, then something's missing, right? So, I had to ask him, so why do you think you don't have influence? Like, what's provoking that feeling? Apart from one's own kind of insecurity or feeling of imposter syndrome. Maybe, I don't belong here, and therefore I am perceiving that I have no influence. And it could be totally false. It could be totally off base. He went on to say that, well, I'm accused of wearing my emotions on my sleeve. I'm like, okay, so what exactly does that mean? What does it look like? And what impact does it have to the people around you? And trust me when I say this triggered me, because my responses would have been very similar to what his responses were. And that was, well, I get very loud. I get very emotional, which is like stress, which could be agitation, sometimes anger. And then he went on to say, I'm perceived, which is reality for others. Perception is reality. And it was noted actually in some feedback that he received that he could be over demanding and controlling. So we can all imagine what those two things mean. Pretty self-explanatory. But I did dive into controlling because I just love to understand kind of people's own perception, self-perception of them being controlling. And his was that he doesn't have a lot of trust in the people around him, personally or professionally. And therefore, the controlling aspect is really around the fact that he feels like he has to, kind of have a grip on everything. He has to be in on everything because he doesn't trust other people to do the job, do it the way he would want it, in the time that he would want it, so forth and so on. And then over demanding, actually also related to the fact that because he's a workaholic, he thinks everybody else should be around him. And then he's very task oriented. Now, this is an individual with 2 layers below him. So obviously, even with 1 layer below, and you want to be a true leader, and especially one of influence, you have got to kind of leave the task to your team, trust your team to do their job. So you can be the one in the front leading them, not pushing them from behind, but leading them from the front. And that will support you being one of influence. So emotional, over demanding, controlling, and task oriented. How many of you know those type of people? Trust me when I say obviously shedding the corporate bitch tells you a great deal about my own story, that being my book, Shedding the Corporate Bitch, Shifting from Bitch to Rich in Life and Business. That's exactly who I was. And I saw it as power, position, and prosperity. Those were the 3 things that I wanted. So when I asked him, so what do you want? What is the ultimate goal you have, in your team being led by you? And, his response was, I want all of us to be happy. He didn't use that word. He wanted all of us to love our jobs. He wanted all of us to be successful. He wanted all of us to work together and to achieve our goals, so forth and so on. So he had all the right words when we had the conversation. So I said, well, so what's breaking down? So how does you having kind of the altruistic end goal of everybody being happy and being successful, how does it break down to where you are wearing your emotions on your sleeve, over demanding, task oriented, so forth and so on? So that's why I say we can't spend all the time that I would have with a client when it comes to this type of thing. But because we have to get under the covers and we have to kind of dig into the junk, what I call bitches in my world, the fears, the insecurities, the doubts, the negativities that someone is dealing with that is causing them to act out in these ways that are totally contrary to what they want, but that is how their reality is. So this is what we discussed, and these are the tips that I would share with anybody who's looking to gain influence with those around you. First off, you need to build connections and relationships with people. Your team members are people. they want to, wake up in the morning and walk into a building or walk, to their desk, and they want to feel valued. They want to feel like they're contributing. They want to feel important. They want to feel heard. They want to feel like they're contributing to something, that they're not just somebody's taskmaster or somebody to be controlled or someone to deal with someone's, emotional baggage. And so if this is what I said to him, and I'll say to you, if your goal is that you want everyone, not just yourself, everyone to be happy and fulfilled and successful, then you need to really consider what is that going to mean and look like for those individuals. What do I need to do as their leader to then ensure that they are happy and fulfilled and successful? And the first step in doing that is to build connection and relationships with them. They're not robots. Learn about them, get to know them, understand what makes them tick, understand what, drives them crazy, but also what motivates them. But treat them as people and as you would want to be treated and you would want to be supported. And that will be your first step toward that influence, because through that, you're also going to start gaining their trust. You're going to start trusting them and they're going to start trusting you. It's going to take a lot more than just that to gain trust, because that's like the ultimate, the ultimate connecting element of what I'll call success, professionally or personally, is having that trust, with others. Then, what I would suggest that anyone do is then, like I said, they want to be heard. They want to contribute. They want to, be engaged. So you might think that because you're on the hierarchy, you're at the top of the hierarchy, that they, are just there to serve you. But that's kind of an old school mentality. They want to be engaged. They want to be heard. Therefore, ask them, include them, involve them, challenge them, motivate them, hold them accountable, but kind of ensure that, they are part of the team, that they are part of the end goal, not just people there to get the work done. They want to be engaged and contributing. Then, of course, you definitely, absolutely, through all of this is you need to be a really strong listener. If you want to gain influence, you just need to kind of listen, be intentional about learning and understanding, because then you can be intentional about what you say when you say it. You can be intentional about the questions that you might ask, the challenge or debate you might raise up. And trust me when I say, if you are doing things with a lot of presence and self-awareness and intention, people are going to notice that. And therefore, you're going to have more influence, because now they're going to trust that, this person isn't wearing their emotions on their sleeve. So I can't necessarily trust that they're going to give me a logical and emotional, what's the word I'm looking for? And, a complete answer to what it is that I'm asking, or the challenge that I'm bringing up. Definitely his one challenge about wearing his emotions on his sleeve will always be a challenge to him having influence if he doesn't get it under control. So that's why I bring up if there's any adjustment or shift he could be making, it could be the fact that he spends more time listening and observing for understanding and knowledge than reacting and kind of putting himself in the middle of things and feeling he has to be the one who's, driving the ship. But listening is key. And then, of course, all of these have to do with self-awareness, as I mentioned. Self-awareness in one's behavior, on one's, even their body language, their tone, their approach. Leaders are there to, kind of, lead from the front, as I mentioned, but more so allow them to take on the role and the responsibility that they have, make the mistakes, take the risks, have the awards and the accolades and the recognition, Because if your team's successful, you're successful. So if you can, kind of remove your own, and this is what I mentioned to George, remove your own agenda, your own ultimate goal, your own, greed and ego, and really just kind of put all of it onto your people, then they'll see that you're there for them, that you're going to show up, that you're there consistently, that you follow through on what you say, follow through on what you commit to, you stand up for them, you have their back. All of those things create true connections and true relationships based on trust and faith and stability and certainty, and therefore influence. All right. So those are just some tips there. All right, let's get to D's. And I mentioned at the very beginning, I had to really genericize this because it, even though I was, I was told that I could talk about the situation, I don't want to reveal anything specific. And so the overarching situation is, how do I recoup from an unprofessional communication that I sent? So first off, if you came to me with this type of situation, I would have you either show me what it was that was written, or go through it in very, specific detail as to what was said, responded to, reacted to, so forth and so on. So it was a email communication, and someone was calling her out passive aggressively in a email that she screwed up on something. Now, when you first read it, if you were to first read it, I had to ask her, like, why did you react to this? I mean, it's very well written. I wouldn't take it defensively or offensively. So what is it that, you reacted to, and why? Well, it turned out that it was not the exact words. It was her knowledge and perception of this individual that she's known for quite a while, and that this individual is very consistent in kind of putting things in a very passive aggressive, politically correct way that calls somebody out of making a mistake, and wants to ensure that they maintain their reputation. And so when she explained to me that, well, it's more so because I know her and this is what she does all the time, so forth and so on. And I said, then is there any way that you overreacted to this? That it really didn't deserve the response that you eventually made? Is there a chance that you overreacted to this? And, and she acknowledged. So then she goes on to say, I said, okay, so then what did you do? Like, so where did you, send an unprofessional communication? And she went on to explain that, well, she responded. Oh, I should mention too, that this email wasn't just a one-on-one, which in corporate, it's amazing. So it wasn't a one-on-one, this individual happened to include two higher level bosses of this individual's, of D's. And so, so I said, okay, so then how did you respond? And what did you say? And who did you send it back to? Well, it was sent back to everyone. And it was kind of a tit to tat, I'll call it. And that's what I told her. So I'm not telling you anything I didn't tell her. So it was kind of a tit to tat. Well, this is how she put it and what she said. So I came back, defended myself in such a way, which was, if she took this person's comments as passive aggressive, then her comments would come across the same way, because it was kind of positioned the same way. But again, even her response did not appear in writing to be anything more than, well, this is what happened or didn't happen. Although she did deflect responsibility. She didn't know she was responsible at the time, but she deflected, and, and this is what you do to solve the problem, was her response. So both correspondents looked fine on the surface. But then as you start having conversations, then you learn that, well, there was a lot more, that was meant to be interpreted from those words, although the two bosses would not have picked up on it. They wouldn't have, because they don't know these two individuals as intimately as they know each other. So then I went on to say, okay, so your email correspondence was just fine. However, I would have suggested to you that you pick up the phone and call her. And if you feel that this is what she was actually saying that you were offended by, then confront that directly. Oh, I did that. Okay, great. Awesome. She does that. She went on to say that, which a lot of individuals do, is when they are uncomfortable with conflict or a confrontation that's about to happen, and they were offended or hurt by something that was said or done to them, then they will create kind of a joke about it to kind of put it out on the table. They'll say it in a very jokingly way. I've learned over, the last number of years, by my own behavior, is that's passive aggressive. If you are looking to have a mature conversation and address a mature adult issue about being disrespected or mistreated or whatnot, then you kind of need to leave the jokes aside. And it's been a hard lesson for me to learn, let alone when I now coach it to many of my clients. And so I said, is there a different way you could have presented that than in a joke? And I said, could you have simply have said to her, hey, we've known each other for a long time, and there's just something that has occurred, multiple times that just offends me, and I'd like to, bring it up to you. And then just ask questions about the situation. So then she can provide feedback that might all of a sudden change your opinion as to whether or not it was meant to hurt you or not hurt you. And I know I'm being very vague, but I'm trying to respect, the actual details of the situation. So we talked through that communication that, again, when we are triggered, if you are triggered by a piece of communications that looks like it's being disrespectful or offending or not appropriate in any way, shape, or form, or just pisses you off, before you react, I would always suggest a pause, sit back, take a breath, look at it again, and then initially ask yourself, is this worth my time and my energy and my angst? Or is this just something I'm going to respond and yet not have any type of emotion in it? And yet, if it is also to the degree that, yes, I'm being, disrespected and offended, blah, 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 well, then again, pause, breathe, and don't stoop down to someone's level. Don't do that, because that's not helping anything. Find a different way to address it. And for me, when it comes to something like that, I prefer to address it directly, not through email, but get on the phone, get on a Zoom, do something, but get it more direct. So we talked through that. So then I said, okay, so then what happened? You sent the response back. I don't believe the two bosses would have read into it the way you're reading into it, and you think the other person's going to read into it. So then what happened? Well, my boss sent it back to me, and she was annoyed. I'm like, what exactly did she say that you think she was annoyed? So she read it to me. It turns out that in the response, D is provided evidence that she dropped the ball, that she is responsible, that she did have an oversight and overlook something. And yet she didn't acknowledge it to me until I called it out on her. And I said, well, wait a minute, wait. She's saying that you did have the information, that there was things that you could have been doing for this issue not to have, grew, and it could have been solved much sooner and faster and easier. Do you see that? And all of a sudden she acknowledged that she did. And I said, okay, so let's make sure, because there, she's actually, if she's annoyed at anything, she's probably annoyed that this thing came across her desk anyway. But if she is, it's just probably because the fact that, yes, this thing could have been, taken care of weeks ago, and this would have never crossed my desk, and I wouldn't have had to be interrupted. So don't read into the fact that she's calling you out on something that you did have an oversight on. Can you see that? And she, acknowledged yes. So I said, all right, so then you just need to take accountability for it. And you just acknowledge that, yes, and you'll find the solution and make sure that it's taken care of going forward. So the whole purpose of me bringing this up is it's a great example of how perception is reality. So what someone says or does or writes can be, filtered and interpreted through your own perceptions, which are your reality. And the same for the other, the other parties involved. So be sure that, one, you're not stooping down to anybody's level. If it is, behavior that isn't appropriate or isn't professional, don't stoop down to someone else's level. Don't read into things. If you have an issue with someone, be the, mature professional adult that you are, and effectively address it by asking questions to learn, from this individual, what their motivations are, what their behavior is about it, what their thoughts are about it, because again, their perception is reality. So conflict and confrontation does not have to be ugly, and it doesn't have to be hard. If you formulate the approach and the conversation as the fact that you want to ask, listen, and learn, and then come to a compromise, come to a solution, an answer, whatever the case might be. All right. And lastly, be accountable. If you, all of a sudden are being called out on something, we all make mistakes. I don't care what level of experience, what level of an organization, what age you are. We all make mistakes until the day we die. We're making a mistake at doing something. So, be okay with that and acknowledge it, and just find the solution for it not to happen again. And, try hard not to let it totally sabotage and derail your confidence, your outlook, your feelings of self-worth and value. Because it's majority of the time, these situations are almost kind of forgotten by the other parties very quickly. That saying, you'd be surprised at how little, others think of you. When I first heard that, I was just like, what the hell? Oh, I don't know what that means. You'd be surprised at how little other people think of you. But when I realized how debilitating it was for me, thinking that any mistake I made, or any screw up, or any, embarrassing situation that I made, I kind of blew them up in, out of proportion to such degree that it was almost like my life is going to end. And yet it was minuscule. But I spent and wasted actually so much time and energy and positivity and motivation and inspiration, that it got to the point where it was just absolutely debilitating. And so I don't want anyone to get to that point when there's just such easy solutions to it. And I'm so glad that Dee reached out to kind of drill into that and be open to receiving the hard feedback and coaching that I provided her. Because I can tell you right now, she won't respond and react again like that. She won't, because she sees kind of how it's not worth it. All right. So again, as we close up, I want to thank Lee. I want to thank George and Dee for their questions. And at any time, if you need to have a conversation with me, 30 minutes, complimentary, bring me your question, bring me your situation, your challenge, and let me support you, I'd be honored to. All right. See you next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Power Hour Coaching. Talk to you soon. Bye.